Back for another edition of In the Huddle. Carl Dukes put them up along with my man Jason Lockon Thor, Brian Baldinger, part of this podcast as well. And guys, what a crazy week it was in the NFL. Now, it being Thanksgiving week, we're going to take a look back at a couple of games, including last night's game as we record this on Tuesday. Monday night's contest, Ravens-Chargers. We'll talk about it because we spent a lot of time on the Ravens and how good they are, how good Lamar is, and he was great again last night. But we also are going to look ahead to some of the Thanksgiving Day games, or at least one of them, and then into Sunday's games before we come back at you next week. So, Jason, first and foremost, Daniel Jones asked for his release this week. And I just want to start there because the Giants are playing the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. I don't know how entertaining this game is. Everybody's going to be home. You'll probably have it on. But at the end of the day, I have very little interest simply because I don't think it's going to be a great game. But with that said, Daniel Jones now is a free agent, and everybody's wondering where he might end up. Let's start there because people always say, oh, he's done, he's washed up, he can't play. These guys do get second chances, and we've seen it with a guy like Sam Darnold. Now, I don't know if somebody believes in him like they thought about Sam Darnold, who was obviously a very high pick, but so was Daniel Jones.
Yeah. You know, I think I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Sorry. I got a cold. It's a heck of a way to start the podcast.
Bless you.
Thank you. He's at a fork in the road here. He could do two different things. Like he's going to, it's not going to be any money, right? He's going to be playing for the vet minimum. So it's, excuse me, about opportunity for him. And where does he think he fits in best? Look, there's teams like the Raiders that desperately need a quarterback right now to get them through the rest of the year. Now, they've also got a hodgepodge offense, right? They just pulled Scott Turner and North Turner and all these guys off the street to try to run their offense for the second half of the year because they fired their coordinator. You know, is that going to put Daniel Jones in position to succeed? Is that going to raise his market value for next year, right? Because this is about trying to hit the market with some positivity. And he doesn't have a lot to compete with. Like, Justin Fields is probably going to be, if Pittsburgh keeps Russell Wilson, Justin Fields might be the best free agent quarterback out there. And it's not a great draft class. And like, you know, oh boy. Excuse me. Sorry. Somebody might trade for Cousins, you know, like, but there's not a whole lot out there, you know. So Sam Darnold himself, right? If they turn it over to JJ McCarthy, then, you know, maybe Darnold's in that mix, but I think he probably goes somewhere where he can just sit and learn and be available if there's an injury, whether that's San Francisco, where, like, you know, Brock Purdy is throwing the ball a little bit this week, but it doesn't sound like it's glowing, and it's easy to aggravate a shoulder injury. You know, would you rather have Daniel Jones to try to help you get in the playoffs if you need a quarterback for a few weeks, or Brandon Allen? Like, Kyle Shanahan probably thinks he could do it with anybody, but I think Daniel Jones would be interesting there. You know, Josh Johnson, I don't know what he started, like, I don't think he started a game in 3 years. He's the Ravens' backup. You'd rather have Daniel Jones or Josh Johnson? You know, I think you'd rather have Daniel Jones. So it's going to be up to him, though. Like, where do he and his agents feel like he has the best chance to set himself up for 2025? I tend to think, you know, again, do you want to go to Jacksonville, or is he better than Mac Jones? I think so. Are you going to be set up to succeed there with a coach who knows he's getting fired any day? I don't know, Carl. Like, you probably play sooner there, but I don't know that you come out of there with a lot of great film, or you know, you've upped your stock. So to me, it's kind of a nothing burger. Like, he probably, like, it's a nothing burger unless he goes to a good team and then has to play because the starter gets hurt. But like,
well, you've seen him on tape, though, right? I mean, you've got enough tape on Daniel Jones to know whether or not you want him. But I agree. Like, is he an upgrade from some of the guys you're talking about? Yes. I just think, like, for Sam Darnold, all the chips fell the right way for him to get another opportunity, right? I mean, he goes to Carolina, and you know, they had three quarterbacks, including Baker Mayfield, when he was there.
Yeah.
And he was very limited. And then he gets this opportunity to go to San Francisco to sit behind, you know, these guys and learn and observe. And all of a sudden, the Minnesota thing opens up. And then J.J. McCarthy gets hurt, right? So it was like all these chips fell
Yeah.
perfectly for him to get this second opportunity to show, hey, I really can play. And that's kind of what's going to happen for Daniel Jones, to your point. I don't think he goes anywhere and takes somebody's job.
No. It's unlikely. I just don't know that some of these, there's a lot of really bad teams in this league, and some of them could use, Daniel Jones is better than their starter, but is he good enough to make it worthwhile? I don't know. I don't know. But like, if Daniel Jones wants to make $5 to $8 million a year being a backup for the next 6 years, he could probably do it. Like, I think he could find himself in that tier that, you had guys like Chase Daniel in for a long time, or like that sort of like, make a decent living, barely have to play, have a, add some longevity to your pension. Like, I think he can do that.
Yeah, I do too. And it's going to be interesting to see, who values him. Quarterbacks are always valued, especially when you're a high draft pick. He's going to get another chance. It's just a matter of where. It's In the Huddle. Subscribe, follow us, like us on YouTube, guys, and tell your friends. Of course, you can watch us at In the Huddle Pod on YouTube. Jason, we got to talk about last night's game, the Monday night game, because it was a big spot for both teams, Chargers,
Yes.
Ravens. Obviously, the Ravens win this game, but I think the game changed when J.K. Dobbins ends up leaving.
Absolutely.
So Dobbins, at the point when he left, had 40 yards on 6 carries. They were running the football. He leaves. Allegedly, it's a knee injury. Harbaugh said he didn't have any update after the game, but he did say it's a knee. J.K. Dobbins did not speak to reporters after the game. And here's the deal for me. This changes, or could, their whole season. Because
Absolutely.
he's been so good, Jason. And then on the other side, that damn Derrick Henry, they gave him the rock last night, and he really carried the Ravens as he ran for over 100 plus, I think 140. But let's talk about this game for a second, because the Chargers, we've been saying they're a really good team. It's the first time all season, guys, they've given up more than 20 points on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, the Dobbins injury was huge. I feel horrible for that young man. He originally had a sort of fairly catastrophic knee injury when he was a Raven. Going into his second year, it was going to be his first year as a full-time starter. He kind of unseated Mark Ingram about midway through his rookie season. And that whole offseason, man, like, they were building the offense around him. This was still Greg Roman there, and it was about, let's flex him out in the slot. Let's flex him all the way out outside the numbers, because they didn't have, they still had like Sammy Watkins as their number 2 receiver, right? So it's like, let's use Dobbins all over the field. And that was the plan. And then he shredded his knee on some terrible turf in Washington in a preseason game. The young man was distraught about it. It wrecked his career. When he came back, he had to get another procedure done because he really kind of couldn't hit that third and fourth gear that he had before. Then he finally gets his way back from that, and he's around for playoff games and stuff, and they don't put the ball in his hands that much. So this was a big emotional game for him, facing the Chargers. And he was one of the more impactful football players on that field until he got hurt. He also had 5 targets already in that game. And with no Roquan Smith, like, I think he could have caught 8-9 balls in that game. Like, I think he could have had 170 scrimmage yards in that game and really made it a football game. So it was a devastating blow. And these other backs don't have his twitch. They don't have his wiggle. And the run game was gone. And the screen game got hurt as well by his departure. What does that mean for the Chargers moving forward? Like, again, this is a kid who's had, issues with his knees going back to college. So I hope it's not serious. But that would be a big blow for them. As to the Ravens part of it, Carl, like, styles make fights. And if the Ravens were going to win this game, they were going to win it playing caveman football. They were going to win it getting under center, lining up in the I formation with the fullback who's 300 pounds. And the running back who's 250. And they were going to run right at the Chargers, who have done a really good job as a defense this year, but who are like, it's kind of like that Buffalo primetime game. It's a committee approach to stopping the run. They don't have real 2-gappers. They don't have elite run stuffers. They don't have the girth and the width to hold up to that Ravens rushing attack if they really lean into the fullback and Derrick Henry. And that's what they did. And Lamar barely ran. and they controlled the game with under center runs. It was old school. It was I formation.
It was.
And the Chargers just don't have a front seven that has
and you
enough.
know what,
heft.
Jason, real quick, there are very few teams in the league who can do that, which is why I think the Ravens are so dangerous. To your point, we're just going to line up and run it right at you, right? A lot of these teams are running wide zone, right? We're going to get on the outside. We want our guy to cut back and all this stuff, which is great.
And they do that too. I mean, they look inside zone, outside zone. They love that stuff. But
very few teams can just line up and go, we're going to run it right at you, right? And I totally agree. Here's what's crazy. Lamar only had 177 yards, but so efficient again. 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was efficient. And sometimes I think we get so caught up in the numbers. If he doesn't throw for 300 or 400 yards, he didn't have a great game. He had a really good game.
They ran the ball 40 times. I mean, what do you want? You want to throw for 400 yards? They ran the ball 40 times. He didn't run that much. He didn't have to. They dominated the game in the second half. They got the first half time of possession was dominated by the Chargers, and Dobbins had a lot to do with that. Dobbins leaves the game. Ravens dominate second half time of possession. The throw that Lamar made to Rashad Bateman also changed the game.
Woo.
So, he hits a 50-yard bomb there. They get some separation. They take the lead. Away they go. Like that was, Dobbins leaving, that him hitting Bateman on that deep shot. He didn't turn it over. They had some other, I think guys could have made some plays from. Look, he had a slow start. First quarters have been a little rough for their offense lately. Their early scripts haven't been great, and Lamar's been kind of throwing, his mechanics have been off, and he's been sailing balls high early in games. But he got that corrected. He continues to play at a really high level, and if they needed him to throw for 350, I think he could have thrown for 350. But when you have that matchup going on the ground, and they can't stop your fullback and your big back, and you're on the road and you really need this win, that's what you're going to do. And that's what they did. But I still think Lamar's going to win the MVP. And
I do too. And as far as the standings, guys, the Steelers obviously sitting at 8-3, the Ravens at 8-4. But in the division, which is what matters, right? You're trying to win your division. Remember, they will match up again in Baltimore, and that's going to be a huge game. And speaking of the Steelers, this weekend, as we fast forward, right, into Thanksgiving Day games, Friday we've got a game, Chiefs are playing, and then we get into Sunday, Pittsburgh and Bengals. And here the Bengals are, 1-4 away from home, 1-2 in the division, Jason. And you look at this game and you keep thinking that, at some point they're going to have some life. I don't know what to think about how the Bengals are going to try to get back into this with the way that their defense has played. Burrow has been great. We know that. But let's talk about this game real quick. This one's at home. Steelers are coming to Cincinnati Sunday in the 1 o'clock window into Thanksgiving weekend. So we just talked about where the Ravens and the Steelers are. What's this going to take, man, for Joe Burrow, who has over 3,000 yards already, 27 touchdowns, 4 picks for Joe Burrow so far?
Joe Burrow in his career has struggled against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The last 2 times he's faced them, he put up big yardage. But that's back in 22. He missed both games last year. Remember, they played late in the season after Burrow was already hurt. For his career, he's got an 88.0 rating. He's thrown a lot of picks against that zone defense they throw at you. He's got an interception in 4 or 5 games against them. It's a weird spot for me because the Bengals are coming off their bye, but Pittsburgh hasn't played in 9 days, right? So Pittsburgh is going to be coming off sort of a mini bye. I went back and looked. So we talked, Thursday night, the big narrative, and it's true. Mike Tomlin, divisional games on the road on a Thursday night, he doesn't win.
Right.
So I'm like, well, let me go back and look at the last 10 years and see how many times Mike Tomlin loses back-to-back road divisional games. How many times has he lost, 2 straight road games in the AFC North? I looked at the last 30 Pittsburgh Steelers road games against the division. Carl, he's lost back-to-back road games 1 time in 29. Once in the COVID year. In a game that got moved around. Once.
That's
going back to 2014. Okay?
That's crazy.
Where do you think my money is? This man is 40-25 in his career as a road dog. And he's got his team, right, refocused after laying an egg against the Browns team they should have beat. Like, the Bengals wins this year are Carolina, the Giants, the Browns. I mean,
bad teams. Bad teams.
They haven't fared well against good teams. Maybe they bow up. Maybe this is their Super Bowl. You know, the Bengals are 1-4 at home against the spread. 6-7-1 at home against the spread the last 2 years. Mike Tomlin's covered 9 of 14 road games the last 2 years. I think Pittsburgh finds a way to win an ugly football game. They're built more for it than the Bengals are.
Yeah.
And if the Bengals do win, then look out, because they're not totally dead.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this is literally, I think they're on life support, right? Especially you start talking about the division, the AFC seedings. We're at that point in the season where a lot of this stuff is now playing out, and you start to get a clearer picture of guys heading to week 13 in the National Football League. So, yeah, I'm with you. This is a must-win at home specifically, and they're 1-4 at home. They haven't been great at home. So that's the other part of this. I mean, it's not only are they beating bad teams, but it's they're not good at home this year, despite how good Burrow has been. It's In the Huddle, guys. Jason Canfora, Carl Dukes, Brian Baldinger, a part of this podcast as well, as we take a look to the upcoming games. Let's talk about Thanksgiving real quick. The one game that does interest me is Bears at Lions. Caleb Williams has taken a step. If you're not watching and you're not paying attention, he's taken a step. Now, I don't know if that's due to Thomas Brown. Maybe he's refocused, whatever it is. But if you go back to last week, and again, I know they lost, but to take that game into overtime, and it was a very entertaining game, by the way, Bears at Vikings, or Vikings, should I say at Bears, 30-27 was the final score. Vikings took a field goal in overtime. But Caleb, 340 yards. He looked like he was in control. He was moving the rock, making great throws, great decisions. And Jason, he threw it 47 times. I don't know if we've seen him, throw it that much, but they kind of had to in that game. Yes. And I say all that to say, now you get into Thanksgiving Day, Thursday. We got 3 games. The first game of the day, Bears, Lions, Cowboys, Giants and Cowboys. And then the night game is Dolphins, Packers, which we'll talk about in a second. The Lions are so damn good. And Jason, they're favored by 10.5. Do you think I don't know if they're going to beat the Bears by 10.5 on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, they might not. If you made me pick a side, though, I'd still take Dan Campbell because he covers like a machine.
It's been great this year.
No matter what he does.
Yeah.
And, he's 22-8 against the spread at home. That's going to get my attention. Here's the thing. Yes, I like what the Bears are finally doing offensively. This is tough, though. It's a rookie quarterback going on the road where he's really struggled, where they've really struggled, right? Their road productivity, Carl, 9 points, 15 points, 16 points, 13 points. That's what they've done on the road. It's a short week, no practice time, no prep for the best team in the NFC. It's going to be loud as hell in there. The Bears' offensive line is not good. And so here's what I know about Matt Eberflus. He's 7-14 against the spread on the road. The Bears are 10-20 against the spread on the road as a team since 2021. And the Bears, under Matt Eberflus, have played 21 road games. They have led at the half twice. They've been tied at the half 4 times. Obviously, they trail in everything else. They're a horrible first half team on the road. Since 2022, in the first half, 21 games, they have a -128 scoring differential. That's 3rd worst in the NFL. The Lions are the best first half team in the road. Since 2022, at home, the Lions are +172 in the first half of games. They're in their own stratosphere. The Lions this year, overall, first half, +97. Best in the NFL. Can the Lions win the first half by touchdown? I think so. I think the first half is the way to play this. I got it at 6.5. I do think Detroit will be ready for this game. They're used to playing on Thanksgiving. Remember, they laid an egg last year on Thanksgiving against Green Bay. Goff fumbled 3 times.
Yep.
I just don't. I don't think they're going to let up here facing a divisional team. Not after what happened to Green Bay last year, and they'll be ready to play. I don't think Eberflus's group will. Like, the Bears have suffered some heartbreaking losses now, right? And when they lost the Washington game, it sent them on a tailspin. And then they came back and they played Green Bay tough, and they still lost on a field goal. And then they play Minnesota tough at home where they're better, and they still lose in overtime on a field goal. Now it's a really short week, and if they don't have a fast start, so like I'm also on Lions minus 10.5, and just because I think by the time we get to Thursday, it's going to be more, and I'm not backing Eberflus on the road ever. So it's a small bet, nothing major, but I think the first half is the play.
Yeah. And you said it's 6?
I got it at 6.5.
Yeah, that's a smart play based on the metrics. What we're talking.
I'd like to get it lower. I probably jumped it too soon. It was only as soon as I saw it available in one market, I jumped it. Now I haven't checked this morning. It's got to be available everywhere. So maybe you can get a better number than that. But again, the Bears are one of the worst road first half teams in the NFL since Eberflus took over, and the Lions are the best first half team under Dan Campbell going back to 2022 at home.
Yeah, and that's again the early Thanksgiving Day game. The second game, Giants Cowboys, guys, and again quarterback matchups. It's just not appealing. It is two big brands, but both teams, one's 2-9, the other's 4-7. Even though the Cowboys got a hell of a win at the Commanders last weekend, I'm not sure how entertaining that game is going to be, but we'll have it on because it's Thanksgiving. Let's talk Dolphins Packers though, because this one's got my attention. At Lambeau, it's the night game on Thursday night. Here come the Dolphins, Jason, right? I mean, I've been waiting for them to kind of get things going.
Yep.
And it just felt like, okay, they were spinning their wheels. But, the Buffalo Bills are 3-0 in the division. The Dolphins are 2-2 in the AFC East. And I just feel like, okay, you start looking at some of these teams, maybe wild card, the pecking order. Dolphins have given themselves a shot, but they got to win this game, I believe, at Green Bay. Now, again, it's AFC, NFC, but the fact of the matter is Green Bay has looked really good, and Jordan Love, despite his, I don't want to say lackluster play, but he hasn't been Jordan Love from last year. So they're winning in spite of right now, I think, Jordan Love, but this game is interesting to me, the night game on Thanksgiving Day.
I'm just looking at the updated Doppler forecast here, Carl, because it's the first thing I looked at for this game when I played it as soon as it populated over the weekend. Real feel, 10 degrees. High of 30 that day, a low of 23 in Green Bay.
And it's night.
11-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, at night, the real feel, that's going to warm up through the day. So at night, the real feel will be 21 degrees. No precip. They were originally, the look-ahead forecast a week out was calling for some rain. 26 degrees. That'll feel like 20 at kickoff. Miami Dolphins, when it's 40 degrees or colder since 2017, are 1-8 against the spread. They failed to cover those games on average by 4.5 points. Tua, in his career, when it's under 50 degrees, we'll take it up to 50. He's 1-6. He's got a 58.6 completion percentage in those games, 8 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Tua against winning teams. Tua in his career against teams that have a winning record when he faces them. 9-17 straight up, 11-14-1 against the spread. Carl, the last 12 times Tua's faced a winning team, he's 3-9 against the spread. He's failed to cover all those games by 4.5 points or more. He has an 86.5 passer rating in those 12 games. 16 touchdowns to 11 picks, just 7 yards per attempt, 64% completion percentage. Who do you think I'm on here?
Well, we talked about this when they went to Kansas City last year, right? They don't win. He doesn't win in cold weather conditions.
They don't even show up.
And to your point, that is the benefit of this particular game. Timing, year, what time of the year it's being played, on the road. And it's hard for me to go against the Packers. Now, again, they blew out the 49ers, but guys, the 49ers are destined. Last week, no Trent Williams, no Bosa. There's a lot there. So they get beat by 28. I think that's a little bit, you look at the score and you say that's an over-exaggeration just based on the personnel that was in the field And then Brandon Allen, come on. But I agree with you, Jason, with the Packers in this spot at night on Thanksgiving night. Like, it's hard for me to go against them. And here's the other thing. We're talking about Jordan Love. Guys, again, when Jacobs runs for $106 and he's got 3 touchdowns, you don't need Jordan Love to throw for 300 yards. He didn't have to do that. And then they got the lead, and that game was over. But I also think this may be a low-scoring game simply based on the fact that you're talking about the weather.
Well, and Miami's defense is solid. Anthony Weaver's done a nice job there. And Miami's playing better football, and they have better belief. But this is it's a real short week.
And Weaver, by the way, was with the Ravens, guys.
Yes.
So there's another defensive guy that has left, and people think he's going to be a head coach.
Yeah, no, he's trending in that direction. And I think Miami's capable of putting up a fight here, and I think Miami certainly is a much better operation now than they were when Tua was out. Jordan Love didn't throw a pick last week. He tried, but he didn't. And so finally, they've gotten him to play a game without throwing a pick. Let's see if that can become contagious. I just think Green Bay's too balanced. I think Green Bay's more acclimated, obviously, to this weather. Matt LaFleur is 25-5 at home outside of the NFC North. So when he doesn't play a divisional game at home, he's won 25 of 30. He knows McDaniel really well. McDaniel knows him really well. They're all part of that Shanahan tree.
Yeah.
But Green Bay is a good football team. And Green Bay hasn't played to the best of their abilities yet. And they're still stacking a lot of wins and putting themselves in position to do damage. They're a young team that peaked in December last year. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Green Bay put on a little bit of a show here and won this game by 10 points or more. If Miami gets behind, are they going to kind of fold up the tents and get back home and take that sort of mini bye and get back in the warmth. And I just have never seen them show up in these spots. Like I just haven't. And as much as I applaud them for saving their season, I think it's not just who you play, it's when you play them and where you play them. And I think Jacobs is going to be able to set a physical tone early. And I think Green Bay is the better football team.
I do too. It's heading into week 13. Green Bay again beat the 49ers last week. That is the night game on Thanksgiving. Let's take a look at a couple other games that are going to happen Sunday. And again, guys, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of our podcast in the huddle. Jason Lock-on-4, Brian Boldinger, Carl Dukes. We appreciate you hanging out with us, talking ball and talking the NFL. All right, I want to talk Eagles and Ravens. So we just talked about the Ravens Monday night handling business on the road. Now they come home, and Jason, I already see they're a 2.5-point favorite at home against the Eagles. I don't know if anybody's playing better right now than the Philadelphia Eagles.
Nobody is.
So this is going to be really interesting. And we talked about being able to line up and run the football the way the Ravens do. Well, this might be one team that's able to slow that down with their front.
Yeah. No, look, the Eagles right now, you look at their 6-game winning streak, they're elite across the board. I mean, Hurts is taking too many sacks, right? The sack rate is almost 12%.
Yeah,
that's
it's almost, you know what? It's almost like he doesn't want to throw it.
Yeah.
He'd rather take the sack than give it, make a mistake. Yeah.
So he's holding the ball too long, so that's a problem. Boy, outside of that, Carl, you look at the EPA and the success rate, like you look at the new wave metrics, you look at the old school metrics, yards per play, yards per rush, yards per pass, turnover margin, second half scoring differential. There are not a whole lot of nits to pick with this operation the last 6 weeks. And they can stop the run. And some of those young men from down the road from you in Georgia are starting to step up and show themselves at a higher level. It should be a hell of a football game. Look, we all know by now that Lamar's only lost one NFC game, right? And it was on the road at the Meadowlands to Daniel Jones, of all people. And they blew like a 10-point lead in the second half. And Daniel Jones came back on them. So there's that. But he doesn't always cover against the NFC. And I could see this getting up to 3, maybe 3.5. And so I'm just kind of sitting on it. Like we always say, though, if you're not still totally sold on the Ravens defense, and the last 2 weeks they've been great, the over, these teams are scoring a lot of points, man. These are two offenses that are hard to slow down. And that over is only going to go up. Last week, the Ravens-Chargers game opened at 47. By kickoff, it was at 51. It went over, but barely. If you were sitting on the 47, you felt a lot better about it than 51 or 51 and a half, right? You're sweating out that garbage time touchdown and everything else. So you may want to jump if you think it's an over game, I would say get on that ASAP. I mean, what these running backs are doing, what these quarterbacks are doing, Jalen Hurts isn't getting enough credit for what he's doing. Like, the Eagles have as many explosive passes as anybody the last 6 weeks. They got as many explosive runs. They're turning you over. The Brandon Graham injury, though, he was dominating. So that's a big loss for the Eagles. And I do wonder about the group coming off the edge. So we'll see how they sort of compensate for that. But I don't know, Carl. Like, the Ravens cover better on the road than home. Like, I'm not betting against the Ravens in this game. Like, I just can't. Lamar has dominated the NFC too much for me to ignore that.
Yeah, it's hard.
But if you can get 3 points with the Eagles, does that end up, or again, maybe even 3.5 ideally? Does that sort of sway the balance? Neither kicker, right? There was a time when Jake Elliott and Justin Tucker were top of the class. They've both been shaky this year. They might be the two best teams in football when it comes down to it at the end. Like, it could be a Super Bowl preview. Like, that's not.
Yes, it could be.
That's not like, hyperbole. Does Roquan Smith come back for this one? If he doesn't, I think the Ravens are going to have a hard time stopping Saquon Barkley and that dominant Eagles run blocking offensive line. It should be a heck of a football game. These two teams are doing a lot of things really well right now, offensively and even lately defensively. Like, the Ravens have strung together two really legitimate defensive outings, and that's with Kyle Hamilton now playing more deep safety. If they got Roquan Smith back to help with the underneath stuff and help with the run support, maybe they can end that Eagles winning streak.
It's going to be a good game. I do know that, and you're right. I'm looking forward. This is the game for me Sunday. Eagles, Ravens, where you go, okay, I'm just going to sit back and get your popcorn ready, as T.O. used to say. Let's talk about one last game before we get out of here, and that is 49ers and Bills. So we think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, even despite the loss to the Steelers, and again, they'll get a chance to play that out. But how close are the Bills? And you're talking about home field advantage, right? In the AFC, right now it still goes through Kansas City, and it probably will, depending on how things get played, because they've got 8 one-score wins this year. They're finding ways to get it done, and they did again last week at Carolina. 49ers coming off that humiliating loss. I got to see how healthy they're going to be.
Yeah.
Sunday night game in Buffalo, and you just talked about the temperatures in Green Bay. Well, similar situation in Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the Bills are a freight train right now. And I think the Bills are full of confidence. And, like, I just don't buy the 49ers. I don't. Purdy's throwing. He says his shoulder doesn't hurt, but he's throwing limited. Like, I don't know that Purdy's playing in this game. We've talked about it with Baldy for weeks now. Mason is the better running back for the 49ers right now. They refuse to use him because they're paying the other guy $16 million a year. And I get it. But if that's not more of a shared load, if Mason doesn't get more opportunities to affect this game with explosive runs, then they're going to fall behind the sticks and they're going to put too much on the quarterback, whether it's Allen or Purdy with a sore shoulder. And that's not going to fly against this secondary on the road. I think Josh Allen's going to put on a show here. Josh Allen, he's got designs on the MVP himself.
Yeah.
And the 49ers defense is not special. The pass rush without Bosa is a problem. We saw Green Bay dominate them at the line of scrimmage last week. I think the Bills can beat them at the point of attack with their offensive line as well. I just think the Bills are the better football team. They're the more confident football team. And right now, they're the better coach football team. The San Francisco 49ers are one of the 5 worst fourth quarter teams in the NFL. They can't get out of their own way, whether they're trailing or leading late in games. Their kicker sucks. Their special teams are probably the worst in the NFL. And when you're playing an operation as good as the Bills are right now at home, that stuff tends to get magnified and become a big deal. So, yes, I think the Buffalo Bills can win this game at home by a touchdown or more. And yes, I think there is a Super Bowl hangover, and the 49ers experienced it 5 years ago, and they're experiencing it again. And they never pulled out of it when they lost to Kansas City in the Super Bowl the first time, and I don't think they're pulling out of it this year, Carl.
Bills have won 6 in a row, including that win over the Chiefs. And now here come the 49ers. I think their next big test is going to be at the Lions. That game is middle of December, I think December 15th. That's going to be, I think, Bills-Lions is going to be, that's a game. We talk about Super Bowl previews.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of those where we'll get a chance to see what's really going on. Jason, man, have a great Thanksgiving.
You too, brother.
And everybody out there, be safe. We'll be back at you next week. We're going to enjoy the holiday and enjoy the football, and then we'll get down to business as we start heading to the next week in the National Football League. I know it's crazy, but, this is week 13, week 14. Guys, we're talking about then 4 weeks left in the regular season, and then, we're talking playoffs. So the seedings and all of that will start to shape up, and we'll be into all of that as well. Hey, everybody take care. Thanks for being here. It's In the Huddle.